The morning sun streamed through the window of our Chicago apartment, painting golden stripes across the hardwood floor. The coffee was brewing, and the scent mingled with the soft floral aroma of Isabella's soap. For me, those were the harbingers of a perfect day. I, Lucas, a 30-year-old graphic designer, loved the routine we had built together. Isabella, my fiancée, was the ambitious and vibrant marketing manager who brightened my days. "Good morning, my love," she said, entering the kitchen with a smile that still made my heart flutter. Her brown eyes sparkled with contagious energy. "Good morning," I replied, handing her her favorite mug. "Excited for the big agency dinner? Tonight?" She made a slight grimace. "Oh, the agency dinner. You know how it is, formalities and more formalities. But at least we'll have good food." She took the mug and leaned against the counter, watching me as I prepared my coffee. "And you? Any interesting projects today?" I felt a slight tightness in my chest. That question always came loaded with a subtlety that bothered me. I loved my job, creating visual identities, bringing brands to life through design. But I perceived in the subtext of Isabella's conversations a certain condescension. "I'm finalizing the proposal for that tech startup. I think they'll like my ideas," I replied, trying to keep my tone optimistic. "Oh, that's great," she said, but her tone didn't convey much enthusiasm. "You know, Pedro mentioned yesterday that they're looking for a new art director at the agency. It would be a great opportunity for you. Something more stable." I swallowed hard. The insinuation that my work was unstable always hit me hard. "I like my freedom, working on diverse projects," I explained, trying not to sound defensive. She sighed slightly. "I know, Lucas. I just want the best for you. Sometimes I think you could aim for bigger things." The silence that followed was charged with an almost palpable tension. I looked at her, trying to decipher the emotion behind her words. Was it genuine concern or a reflection of a different view on what success meant? "I feel good about what I do, Isa," I said finally, trying to dispel the heavy atmosphere. "And having your support means the world to me." She smiled again, but her eyes didn't reach the same brightness as before. "Of course, my love. I'll always support you." At that moment, my cell phone's ringtone interrupted the conversation. It was an email from the startup, scheduling a meeting for the afternoon. A thread of optimism ran through my body. Maybe this project would be the professional recognition I was looking for. The day went on with the usual routine, but that morning conversation lingered in the air, like a subtle shadow. I loved Isabella deeply, but I felt that regarding my career, there was a silent chasm between us. A chasm that night, in the artificial glow of the ballroom, would become painfully evident. The week that followed our tense breakfast was marked by small incidents, like almost imperceptible barbs, which, nevertheless, accumulated like grains of sand in my conscience. Isabella casually mentioned the success of her colleagues at the agency, the big clients they were winning over, always with a tone of admiration that seemed to contrast with how she spoke about my work. "Mariana closed a $1 million contract yesterday," she said at dinner, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "It's amazing how she gets these opportunities." "Good for her," I replied, genuinely trying to share her joy. My day was productive, too. I got very positive feedback from the client of a small coffee shop I'm helping to rebrand. Isabella nodded, but her gaze drifted to her cell phone. "Cool," she murmured, typing something quickly. I felt a slight discomfort. It was as if my triumphs were always put on the back burner, overshadowed by the brilliance of her corporate world. In the co-working office where I worked, things weren't easy either. The proposal for the tech startup in which I had placed so much hope came back with numerous revisions. The client seemed indecisive, and communication became sporadic. That project, which I saw as a chance to prove my worth, was slipping through my fingers. I shared my frustration with Isabella one night while we were watching television. "It seems the startup won't close the deal," I said, the discouragement visible in my voice. "I really thought I had created something special for them." Isabella sighed, without taking her eyes off the screen. "That's a shame, Lucas. But maybe it's a sign. You should consider other options. Pedro was telling me about a senior vacancy at a graphic design company that provides services to the agency. The salary is great, and you'd have more benefits." I felt my blood boil. It wasn't the first time she had suggested I abandon my passion for creative freedom in exchange for financial security, which, to her, seemed to be the only synonym for success. "I like what I do, Isabella," I replied, trying to stay calm. "It's not just about money for me." She finally turned with an impatient expression on her face. "I know, Lucas, but you need to be realistic. This freelance life is so uncertain. Don't you think it would be good to have more stability? To think about our future?" "I am thinking about our future," I retorted, my voice starting to crack. "But my future involves creating, innovating, having autonomy over my work." The argument intensified, revealing the fundamental differences in our worldviews. Isabella valued security, status, and recognition in the corporate world, while I sought personal fulfillment and creative freedom. That chasm between us seemed to widen with each conversation. At a casual lunch we had with Mariana and Pedro, the tension became even more evident. Mariana, with her typical marketing savvy, praised the agency's grand projects, mentioning astronomical budgets and complex advertising campaigns. Pedro, always smiling and cordial, endorsed every word. "And you, Lucas? What projects have you been working on lately?" Mariana asked, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm rebranding a charming coffee shop in the neighborhood and creating the visual identity for a new app," I replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. There was a brief silence, broken by Isabella's soft laugh. "Oh, cute projects," she commented, with a tone that made me feel like my work was an insignificant hobby. The comment, though seemingly harmless, hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt my face flush and a lump form in my throat. Mariana and Pedro exchanged quick, embarrassed glances. At that moment, I realized that Isabella's devaluation wasn't just a matter of different perspectives. There was a growing disdain, a lack of respect for my work, and by extension, for me. That lunch, which should have been a moment of relaxation, became another painful reminder of the distance between us. The night of the gala dinner was approaching, and I sensed it would be the stage for an inevitable confrontation. The hotel ballroom buzzed with the energy and ostentation typical of high-level corporate events. Imposing chandeliers cast a golden glow over the elegantly dressed guests, and the sound of lively conversations mingled with the band's soft music. Isabella, radiant in a stunning red dress, moved effortlessly among her colleagues and superiors, her professional smile always plastered on her face. I followed her, feeling somewhat out of place in that environment where titles and contracts seemed to weigh more than the creativity and passion that guided my life. Mariana and Pedro approached us near the bar, smiling exaggeratedly. "Isabella, you look stunning!" Mariana exclaimed, hugging her. "And Lucas, good to see you here." Her tone was polite, but there was a subtle coldness in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. "Thanks," I replied, offering a forced smile. Isabella soon introduced us to a middle-aged man with an impeccable suit and a penetrating gaze. "Lucas, this is Mr. Henderson, one of our biggest clients. Mr. Henderson, this is my fiancé, Lucas." I shook Mr. Henderson's hand, trying to convey confidence. "It's a pleasure to meet you," I said. "The pleasure is mine," he replied with a nod. "Isabella speaks very highly of your work at the agency." I felt a jolt. "At the agency?" I asked, confused. Isabella laughed nervously. "Oh no." Mr. Henderson got confused. He works for himself with graphic design." She paused, and then, with a smile that seemed forced and condescending, she added, "It's an interesting job, very creative." The casual tone and choice of words were like a bucket of cold water. I felt my face burn with humiliation. Mr. Henderson raised an eyebrow, and Mariana and Pedro exchanged quick, uncomfortable glances. In that instant, the veneer of our relationship shattered completely. The subtlety had disappeared, replaced by a clear display of contempt. There, in front of a client important to her career, Isabella had diminished my work, my passion, the essence of who I was. The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. I could feel the curious and slightly pitying glances of the other guests. The joy I had tried to maintain throughout the night vanished, leaving in its place a searing pain and a cold anger. "Excuse me," I managed to murmur, my voice choked with emotion. I turned and walked away, desperately needing air. I wandered aimlessly through the hall, feeling Isabella's gaze on my back. I stopped near a window, watching the city lights twinkle outside. At that moment, it hit me. The small barbs, the disguised suggestions, the condescending tone, it all culminated in that instant of public humiliation. Isabella not only didn't respect my profession, she was also ashamed of it, and I could no longer ignore that painful truth. I took a deep breath, trying to control the wave of emotions that washed over me. That gala dinner, which should have been a celebration of Isabella's success, had become the turning point of my life. There, in that luxurious hall, I realized that I could no longer continue in a relationship where my essence was constantly devalued. The decision was made. I needed to follow my own path, seek the respect and recognition I deserved, even if it meant saying goodbye to the woman I loved. On the way home that night, the silence in the car was deafening. Isabella tried to start a conversation, but I cut her off with a wave of my hand. Her words at dinner still echoed in my mind, like a painful echo. When we got to the apartment, the atmosphere that used to be one of comfort and intimacy had turned into something cold and distant. "Lucas, I'm sorry if I offended you," she said, her voice hesitant. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to?" I repeated, incredulous. "You introduced me to an important client as if my work was an insignificant hobby. Do you have any idea how that made me feel?" The words poured out of me, loaded with all the frustration and hurt I had repressed for so long. The discussion heated up, and for the first time, I exposed all my insecurities and how undervalued I felt in our relationship. Isabella tried to defend herself, arguing that she just wanted the best for me, but her words sounded empty and insincere. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I ended the engagement. The pain of the separation was intense, excruciating, but there was also a sense of relief, of finally freeing myself from a cycle of devaluation. The days that followed were dark. The apartment seemed empty and silent without Isabella's presence. The routine we had built together had fallen apart, leaving a hole in my life. At work, things didn't improve immediately either. The startup ended up opting for another designer, and new projects seemed scarce. However, amidst the sadness and uncertainty, a flame of determination began to burn inside me. I refused to wallow in self-pity. I decided to focus on my passion, on improving my skills, and on seeking new opportunities. I spent hours in the co-working space, working on personal projects, updating my portfolio, and contacting potential clients. Slowly, things started to change. A small project here, another there. A satisfied client who referred me to another. Recognition for my work began to emerge, albeit timidly. With each small success, my confidence grew stronger. One day, I received an unexpected email. It was from a design agency in Los Angeles, interested in my portfolio. They were looking for a graphic designer with my profile and invited me for a video conference interview. The idea of moving to Los Angeles, the city of dreams and opportunities, initially seemed bold and daunting. But the more I thought about it, the more the idea gained strength. It was a chance for a new beginning, to move away from the painful memories and to seek success in a place where my work could be truly valued. The interview was a success. They were impressed with my portfolio and my passion for design. I received a job offer a few days later. The decision was not easy. Leaving Chicago, my friends, and the life I knew was a big step. But I knew I had to do it for myself, for my happiness and my future. With my heart full of hope and a mix of anxiety and excitement, I accepted the offer and started planning my move to Los Angeles. It was the end of a painful chapter, but the beginning of a new and promising journey. The Los Angeles sun was relentless, a stark contrast to the melancholic gray of Chicago I'd left behind. My small apartment in West Hollywood was simple, but the view of the hills inspired me. The move had been a whirlwind of new experiences, faces, and mainly, the pressure to prove my worth at the new design agency. The first weeks were intense. The company culture was vibrant and demanding, and I strove to keep up with the fast pace of projects. I was soon assigned to lead the creation of the new marketing campaign for a major sportswear brand. A huge challenge, and the opportunity I needed to show what I was capable of. The final presentation to the client was approaching, and the tension in the office was palpable. I spent sleepless nights, refining every detail, every line, every color. I wanted that campaign to be impeccable, a declaration of my talent and vision. On the day of the presentation, the meeting room was packed. Sportswear brand executives, my bosses, and agency colleagues, all eyes were on me. I felt a chill in my stomach, the same anxiety that paralyzed me in crucial moments. But this time, there was something different. There was a silent determination, a newfound confidence that propelled me. I started the presentation, guiding them through the campaign concept, explaining the design choices, the color palette, the typography. The words flowed confidently, and the images that appeared on the screen reflected the passion and care I had dedicated to the project. In the middle of the presentation, one of the brand executives, a man with a serious expression and few words, interrupted. "Mr. Lucas," he said, with a tone that made me swallow hard, "your concept is interesting, but I'm not sure if it really captures the essence of our brand. Could you show us something more risky?" I felt a brief moment of panic. That wasn't the direction I had planned. But then an idea came to mind, a bold vision I had briefly explored but hesitated to present. "Actually," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, "I have another approach that explores a more avant-garde side of the brand. If you'll allow me a few minutes." With trembling hands, I accessed my files and projected onto the screen a series of images and videos that represented a completely new direction for the campaign. It was risky, yes, but it was also innovative and vibrant, capturing the energy and boldness I believed the brand possessed. A silence filled the room as the images paraded across the screen. I could feel the eyes fixed on me, the expectation hanging in the air. Finally, the executive who had asked the initial questions smiled for the first time. "That," he said with a tone of approval. "That's exactly what we were looking for. Something that makes us break out of the mold." A sigh of relief ran through my body. The tension that had paralyzed me had dissipated, replaced by a wave of euphoria and gratitude. The presentation continued, and the reception to my proposal was extremely positive. At the end of the meeting, my boss gave me an effusive handshake, with a proud smile on his face. "Lucas, you nailed it," he exclaimed. "This campaign is a success." At that moment, looking at the smiling faces in the room, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. I had faced the challenge, taken risks, and above all, trusted my vision. In Los Angeles, away from the shadows of the past, I was finally finding my place, being recognized and valued for my talent. That was my climax, the confirmation that I was on the right track, building a new story, written by my own hands. The success of the sportswear brand campaign catapulted my career at the agency. I was promoted to team leader, gained the trust of my superiors, and, most importantly, began to believe even more in my potential. Los Angeles became my new home, a place where creativity pulsed on every corner and where my ideas were received with enthusiasm and respect. The routine was now different. The mornings were busy, filled with creative meetings and stimulating challenges. The nights, often dedicated to personal projects, brought a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I hadn't felt in a long time. The apartment, once a temporary space, gradually became a home, filled with my books, my creations, and the vibrant light of California. Time healed the wounds of the separation. There were moments of longing, of memories of the good times with Isabella, but they became increasingly rare, replaced by the satisfaction of my present. Once, I received a message from her on social media, congratulating me on the campaign's success. I replied with a polite thank you, but the exchange of messages stopped there. Our lives had taken different paths, and I was at peace with that. I realized that the search for professional respect wasn't just about external recognition, but also about self-worth. By freeing myself from a relationship that diminished me, I made room for my growth, both personal and professional. I discovered that happiness and success didn't depend on finding a new love, but on finding the passion for what I did and the confidence in my own abilities. Looking at the Los Angeles skyline on a sunny late afternoon, I felt a deep gratitude for the journey that had brought me there. The difficulties in Chicago, the humiliation at the gala dinner, the pain of the separation, all had contributed to shaping me, to making me stronger and more resilient. I had found my voice as a designer, and that voice now echoed with confidence and authenticity. My story was no longer defined by someone else's devaluation, but by my own ability to overcome obstacles and build a promising future. That was my happy ending, an ending built on the solid foundation of my own worth. 5 years have passed since my move to Los Angeles. The sun still shines brightly, but now I know it as an old friend. The small apartment gave way to a spacious studio in Culver City, filled with natural light and an inspiring view of the city's creative ebb and flow. My career has blossomed in ways I never imagined. The sportswear brand campaign opened doors, and since then, I've had the opportunity to work on incredible projects, collaborating with brands and artists I've always admired. I founded my own small design agency, where I lead a talented and passionate team. I look back at that gala dinner in Chicago, and the pain of humiliation seems distant, almost like a memory from a past life. Isabella has become a footnote in my story, a catalyst that, ironically, propelled me down a much more authentic and rewarding path. I never again allowed someone else's opinion to define my worth. I learned that true validation comes from within, from confidence in my abilities and passion for my work. I found contentment and joy in my independence, in building my own dreams and celebrating every achievement, big or small. Sometimes, on a quiet night in my studio, surrounded by sketches, colors, and the soft melody of an inspiring playlist, I reflect on the journey. I realize that love, in its various forms, is essential, but self-love is the foundation on which everything else is built. Sacrifice is worth it when it's done for our own dreams. And redemption isn't about proving something to others, but about rediscovering one's essence and flourishing. In Los Angeles, under the California sun, I found more than professional success. I found the freedom to be who I truly am, a passionate, fulfilled graphic designer, and above all, happy. My story isn't about finding a new romantic love, but about loving the journey, the creative process, and the person I've become along the way. And that's the most beautiful twist of all.